Greetings, salutations, everybody. Welcome to my companion video. My name's John Campea. And what is a companion video? Well, I'm glad that you asked. You see, every day on the John Campea Show and on the occasional open mic that we do, we take live questions. However, we don't always have time to get around to all of the live questions that get sent in. So what I like to do is I gather up those questions we didn't have time for, I store them away, and then I answer them on these videos, the companion videos, because I want to make sure you guys know that when you send in those live questions on one of the shows, that they will get answered on a video, even if they come a little bit late, but we do get around to them. So, with that out of the way, let's start getting caught up on some of the unanswered questions right now, and we're going to start things off with a question from Ali Hussein, who writes, would you rather see on Matt Reeves' Batman a known actor to play Batman or an unknown new actor to play him? It doesn't matter. Absolutely no preference whatsoever. And you guys know this, right? For those of you who've watched me for any period of time, my general answer is usually this: as long as they get a talented actor. That's all I care about. It's really 100% all that I care about when it comes to that stuff. If you want to go get a named actor, great. Just make sure it's a talented named actor. If you want to go get a brand new guy, totally fine. As long as it's somebody that's been scouted, that's been evaluated, and you can see that they're talented and they've got what it takes to come in and lead a movie, then I'm fine. Honestly, the whole thing about whether it's a new or a named actor is completely irrelevant to me. It makes no difference whatsoever. As long as it's somebody they think are talented, then I'm perfectly fine. At this point, I'll just be happy to get the Matt Reeves Batman. I mean, they are so far behind what their original schedule on this thing, it's crazy. So like I said, at this point, I'll just be happy to get it. If we get it, which isn't, at this point, I still don't even think it's a 100% thing. Anyway, let's move on here. Victor Watson writes, I wish trailers don't get released until 4 months out. I'm with you. Now, I'm okay with the 6 months out window. I'm okay. But you know, and this has been an ongoing theme on my shows for a while. There was this trend in the movie industry for a long time that movies were getting their first trailers dropped further and further in advance, more and more and more and more in advance, to the point where it wasn't uncommon to get trailers that were like hell, like a full year out. Trailers like that were like a full year away from their movies getting released. And they put those things out, playing with my glasses a lot today. They would put those things out like longer and longer and longer in advance. And it was getting ridiculous. And my argument has always been, what's the point? Putting a trailer out 11 months in advance does nothing for your movie. John, it gets people excited. Yeah, well, then the excitement dissipates. You lose all the effect. And then you get down to 5 months before the movie and everybody's forgotten. A great example of that was the first Dumbo trailer. The first Dumbo trailer released forever ago. Forever ago. And everybody forgot all about it until they put out the new trailer now. But any effect, any positive bang you get with that big advance early thing, it disappears eventually. It gets forgotten. Other trailers for other movies come and go, blah, blah, and it gets forgotten, and you get nothing for it. So, thankfully, in the last little while, we've seen those windows getting smaller and smaller. Now, the typical thing is, there are exceptions, yes, but the typical thing now is 6 months. Now, the typical thing seems to be 6 months. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But yeah, I would like, 4 months is a great window for me. I think 6 months is acceptable. But I think 4 months is an ideal window to start putting out your trailers. I think that's the ideal. But different people have different opinions on that, Victor. All right. Alan Gonzalez writes, I remember when Independence Day came out in 1996. I saw the trailer for the first time 2 weeks before the movie came out. I think they were putting out marketing for that before the 2-week window. But I don't doubt that you only saw your first thing for that. Like the big go-to for me right now is like the original John Wick. Like, they put the first trailer for John Wick out 1 month before the movie came out. 1 month. Because they knew they had a limited budget. Why waste it? Let's get our full effect for all of our marketing dollars. We start marketing 1 month before the movie, built up to it, and it was a surprise little hit. I'm not saying every movie should do that, not at all. Different movies have different marketing requirements for sure. But yeah, I mean, there have been movies I've seen with like, that I saw a trailer for the first time 1 week before, stuff like that. It's always a pleasant little surprise when that happens. All right. Shahil Charania, who writes, How does a studio determine a movie's budget? Thank you. It's funny. Somebody else asked me almost that exact same question. It might have been you, Sahil, but maybe you thought it wasn't going to get answered. So every movie has a different budget. And basically what it comes down to is, for most films, there are exceptions. Every film is unique. So don't take what I'm going to say as this is how they do it for every movie. Not at all. But this is the general idea, though. A script gets written. The studio or the producers get a line producer or a team of them to go over the script. And basically, they figure out how many days would you need to shoot something like this? What kind of money would you need to do this, this, and this? And they kind of break it all down in that way. And they come up with what they think a movie would cost. At that point, the studio can go, nah, that's too expensive. We don't think we can get enough money back for a movie that's that expensive. And they'll go, no. Or they'll go, okay, you can, but the line producer says it's going to cost you $105 million to do it. Get your script to a point where you can do it on $80 million or something like that, right? And that's where they come to. Now, there are exceptions, like maybe some big, huge blockbusters, right? Like maybe a new Star Wars movie. The studio may even say to the producers in advance, you got $175 million to make that movie. Go. So there are exceptions. But generally speaking, you write the script, goes to a line producer. Again, I'm oversimplifying this. I know that, but I'm just for the sake of brevity. Goes to a line producer. They evaluate how much it costs. Studio decides if it's worth it at that money, and then the budget gets set. So it's kind of in and out like that. Victor Watson writes, I was looking at how they're doing the DC movie, The Joker, Birds of Prey, etc. I feel these standalone movies are a good idea. Put Batman and Superman to bed for at least 2 more years. Well, it really all depends on your theories and philosophies. Look, even the biggest, most diehard DC movie fan will acknowledge DC's had some struggles with their film projects. Everybody acknowledges that. That's fine. You can like them. I've liked the movies, but I acknowledge there have been struggles, right? Everybody acknowledges there have been struggles. The problem is, everybody looks at the wrong things for what's causing the struggles. Oh, it's the fact that they used Batman. That's causing the struggles. Oh, it's the fact that their tone was dark. That causes struggles. Nah, they've struggled because the movies haven't been good enough to appeal to the wide audience, to the critics, and to the fans. That's it. It's that simple. If they had made Batman vs. Superman in such a way that more of the audience liked it and more of the critics liked it and it caught on more and it kind of grounded itself into the pop culture, nobody would be having any problems. The tone of the DCU was not the problem. Okay? Christopher Nolan's Batman films had a dark tone. Do you see anybody complaining about those? No, that wasn't the problem. Winning cures everything. Winning cures everything. And losing exasperates all the existing problems. It's true in sports, it's true in movies. When a sports team's winning, there may be a lot of underneath the surface problems going on, but nobody pays any attention to them and nobody cares about them because we're winning. We're winning. But when a team's losing, all of a sudden everybody talks about all the little problems in there and they all get highlighted. The same is true in movies. There are problems in the MCU, but the thing is, the MCU keeps putting out movies that everybody loves and they all make money and they're winning, so nobody cares about the problems. Nobody cares about the issues. And look, everybody has real damn short memories. Real damn short memories. Because going into Patty Jenkins's Wonder Woman, everybody was at the point of completely dismissing the DCEU. And then what happened? Wonder Woman came out. Patty Jenkins knocked it out of the park. The best comic book movie of all time? No, but she knocked out a winner. And all of a sudden, nobody thought, oh, DC's now better than Marvel. Nobody was saying that. But all of a sudden, the narrative about the DCU was completely different. All of a sudden, everybody thought much more hopefully about the DCEU. All of a sudden now things didn't seem as bleak for the DCEU. Winning cures everything. And the notion And it's not just the use of Batman or the use of Superman. The notion of any one little item thing, oh, that's the reason. No, the reason is the films haven't been good enough to win over a wider audience. That's the reason. Well, it's because they didn't start like Marvel. It's because DCU didn't start with 5 standalone movies to build up to a justice. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. That's not true. That's not the case. Had Batman vs. Superman come out and everybody loved it, nobody would be talking about they should have started with 5 standalone movies and blah, 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 formula, 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 formula. No, it's about execution, not formula, formula, formula. And I would contend to you and present to you that the answer for DC moving forward is not to put Batman and Superman on the shelf, nor is the answer to make sure you don't put them on the shelf. They just need to do what Patty Jenkins did with Wonder Woman and start cracking some of these things out of the park. And if James Wan does that with Aquaman, you're going to hear a different narrative. It doesn't change everything, but it changes a lot of perception, right? And then a loss will kill it again. Because remember, everything was a lot more positive when Wonder Woman came out and was crushing it. Then Justice League came out and a whole bunch of people hated it, killed out the momentum. Winning cures everything, losing undermines everything. Winning cures everything, losing undermines everything. And we've seen that with DC. So I don't think the good idea or a bad idea is to put Batman and Superman on the shelf. It's just all about cracking out good movies. Execute well. It doesn't matter what formula you follow, just execute it. Make it great. Make it so the audience loves it. Make it so the critics love it. Make it so people respond to it. Make sure so do it in such a way that it resonates with the existing pop culture. Do that. It doesn't matter what formula you're following. So put Superman and Batman on the shelf. That can work if you execute the stuff you're doing. Make Batman and Superman an active part of what you're doing. That'll work if you execute well in what you're doing. But it all comes down to execution. And that is the struggles that DC's had. And they can fiddle with formulas all they want. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea to fiddle with the formula, mix things up, do what. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But it won't fix anything if you don't start executing. And that's what they got to do. James Wan's Aquaman looks like it. Joaquin Phoenix's The Joker, all signs point to pretty good stuff. I'm still ambivalent about Birds of Prey. I still don't know how I feel about Birds of Prey. I really don't. Despite the addition of Ewan McGregor, I'm still on Birds of Prey. But we'll see how that all turns out. All right, interesting question, Victor. Thanks for sending in and asking. Victor follows up with, John, do you remember a movie called Who doesn't know The Big Lebowski? I love that movie. Just so dang funny. I'm the dude. I mean, and it wasn't just, like some people just, when they think of The Big Lebowski and they just think of the dude, it's an incredible cast of characters. That whole movie is just a remarkable cast of characters. It is not an overstatement to say it's one of the most beloved films by cinephiles. Cinephiles love The Big Lebowski. Now, I will admit, Big Lebowski is probably not in my top 30 favorite films of all time. I don't have it on that level. It's great. I do adore it. I think it's wonderful. But there are a lot of people who would say put it in their top 10 of all time, let alone top 20 or top 30. I probably don't have it that high, but there's no denying it's beloved, iconic status forever. The dude abides. I mean, it's there forever, man. So yeah, and it is a wonderful movie, and it is really damn funny. It's a very smart comedy, too. Something we don't see a lot of anymore these days. Stubble McShave writes, do you think we'll see an Elvis biopic within 5 years? Hard to say. There's an Elvis documentary. I think it's called The King. And Chuck D from Public Enemy and Alec Baldwin and Dan Rather and a whole bunch of other people are involved in it. But that's not really a biopic. It's a documentary. And it looks fascinating. I haven't watched it, but I've seen a lot of footage of it. That looks really good. Creating a biopic about Elvis presents some problems, though. Much like doing a biopic on Michael Jackson presents problems. You know, you do a biopic on Michael Jackson, you're not going to make you're not going to make everybody happy with it, no matter what. Do you gloss over the child abuse allegations? That'll turn a lot of people off. Do you actually go into that? That'll turn a lot of people. I mean, a Michael Jackson biopic presents some problems. And I'm not saying anything either way about Michael. I'm just saying doing a biopic on him presents some problems. I think there's some stuff with doing an Elvis biopic that would ultimately present some problems as well. Within 5 years, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to say no. I'm going to guess no on an Elvis biopic within 5 years. Eventually, yes, within 5 years. And I'm just taking a random guess shot in the dark, but I'm going to guess no at this point. Let's see. ZOMG Ruler writes, is it hard for you to watch an assassination in film? Not really. It's as much as anything else in movies. It all depends how it's depicted. Now, I've seen murder in movies that didn't have nearly the same impact on me as, say, that scene in A Quiet Place when Emily Blunt is just walking downstairs where there's an exposed nail and steps on the nail. That was the most bone-chilling scene to me of the entire year. Maybe even more so than that scene in Hereditary, and you know what scene I'm talking about. It all depends on how it's depicted and portrayed. There are assassination, like political assassination things like carried out in movies where it's like, oh, a gunman from across the thing, bang, and then he walks out. And it's like, okay, no real dramatic impact. Some can be carried out with a lot of visceral intensity and maybe some gratuitous stuff and whatever, and it'll have a different impact. So to just answer the question in general, is it hard for me to watch an assassination film? No, generally no, but there are some scenes that'll be different. And sometimes stepping on a nail can be the most gruesome, hard to watch thing for me in a movie more than a murder. You know, it's really weird that way. It all depends on how they conduct and orchestrate the scenes, I suppose. All right. Santez Henderson writes, I've been bringing up Queen and Highlander all week, but seriously, where the hell is a Highlander reboot? It's time for one, or at least a sequel. Well, they've been working on one, Santez. As a matter of fact, why am I forgetting the guy's name? It's David Leitch is the one director of Highlander. And then the other director of Highlander, oh my God, this is going to kill me now. What is the guy's name? Stilisky, Chad Stilisky. That's it. And I remembered before I had to let's start typing it up. Chad Stilisky. So Chad Stilisky, who is the other director of the John Wick movies, he has been working on a Highlander reboot for a long time. Now, the stuff with the Highlander reboot, you got remember years ago, like Ryan Reynolds was supposed to be Connor McLeod. This is going back years ago. They had planned for years to have Ryan Reynolds as the new Connor McLeod in a Highlander reboot, and then eventually that just kind of died. I love Ryan Reynolds. Probably wasn't the right role for him. Anyway, Chad Stilisky has been working on getting one going. Now, this whole thing about a Highlander reboot hit its apex earlier this year, 2018. I believe it was March or April or something like that. But I remember it was a big news item that the screenwriter for the new Highlander reboot turned in their draft of the Highlander script. They turned it in. And they turned it into the studio. And since then, crickets. Nothing. Haven't heard a thing. I also haven't heard anything to suggest they've changed their mind and that they're not doing it. My assumption at this point, and it's only a guess. My guess at this point is that they got the script in, they wanted changes, and those changes are being worked on now. That's my only assumption at this point. So as far as I know, everything's still moving forward. Chad Stilisky's still attached to direct it. He said he's very enthusiastic about it. A script was turned in earlier this year. It's been crickets ever since, but as far as we know, it's still moving ahead. We'll just have to wait and find out for sure and find out everything. But I'm looking forward to it. I want to see a new Highlander incarnation. Absolutely, I do. Let's see. Stubble McShave writes, any news on the release date of the Tolkien biopic? None. Now, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, of course, the guy who wrote the Lord of the Rings novels, J.R.R. Tolkien, They did a biopic on his life starring Lily Collins. And what's the name of the guy who plays Beast in the X-Men films? The guy who plays Beast in the X-Men films. And then he was in that zombie romantic movie. I can't remember what the name of that one was, but he was in that zombie romantic comedy, which was really quite good. I can't remember the name of it. Holt. Nicholas Hoult. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. Anyway, so Nicholas Hoult and Lily Collins. And it's just called Tolkien, I believe. They wrapped production on this movie ages ago. It's completed. I think it's been almost a year. I think it's been nearly a year since they finished shooting it, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And still no word on a release date. Still no word on a release date. Now, if a movie turned out to be crap, well, then just get it out on Netflix or something and make some money off it. But, they haven't put it out anywhere. So, I don't know what their strategy is right now. I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure if it has a distributor. I'm not even sure if the movie has a distributor at this point. So the Tolkien movie is a big mystery. I should look more into that one, but that one's a big mystery right now. All right, Victor Watson writes, talking about a crush, I love the girl in the TV series Grimm. Her name is Bitsy Tulloch. Bitsy Tulloch, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing her name. She played Nick's, that was the lead guy in Grimm, Nick's girlfriend. And then she died and came back, and then Nick ended up with somebody else. And they did some very different things with it. I loved Grimm, notwithstanding the final season. I wasn't the biggest fan of the final season of Grimm. It felt very kind of slapped together, very haphazardly. But other than the final season, I was a big fan of Grimm. And Bitsy Tulloch was one of the big reasons. She was great in it. And she's beautiful, too. And I haven't really heard anything from her or about her since Grimm got canceled until recently. She is going to play, she's the new Lois Lane, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe she is the new Lois Lane for the upcoming Arrowverse crossover Elseworlds. She's going to be Lois Lane, which is great. Again, I was wondering about her recently. It's like, why hasn't she popped up on anything else? The guy who played Nick's best friend in Grimm, Hank, he's in Creed 2. So it's like, there he is. But I haven't seen the Nick guy pop up in anything, unless he's got a new show that I just don't watch. But anyway, I haven't really heard anything about Bitsy either. And then I found out she's going to be Lois Lane. So that makes me kind of interested. I'm interested. And you're right, Victor. She's beautiful and talented. And I'm looking forward to seeing what else she can do outside of Grimm. All right, Victor follows up with, my number one movie so far is still A Quiet Place, mine too. And hopefully nominated for something. Most likely won't, but such a good movie. Oh, it's going to get some big nominations. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to be nominated for Best Picture. I'm not guaranteeing John Krasinski will get nominated for Best Director. I'm not guaranteeing Emily Blunt will get nominated for Best Actress. I'm not guaranteeing it'll get nominated for Best Screenplay. But I feel very good that's going to pick up at least one of those major nominations. Maybe a couple. So, yeah, I agree it's the best movie of the year so far. We still got another month and a half to go. But I wouldn't say it's most likely it won't get any of the big nominations. I think it's most likely that it will. Not a guarantee, but it's going to be, up for some major nominations. And I got to believe it's going to pick up at least one or two of them. And honestly, I think Best Picture is a very realistic, especially in an era where you can get 8, 9, or 10 nominations for Best Picture. I got to believe A Quiet Place is going to pick up some of those votes. And I'm not saying it's going to win, but I got to believe A Quiet Place is going to nominate for Best Picture. Best Director is a little more difficult because it's limited to 5 nominees. And that's going to be a tougher route. That's going to be a tougher road to get down with John Krasinski. But I believe he has a shot. Emily Blunt, again, more limited, only 5 nominees, but I believe she's got a shot. The biggest problem for Emily Blunt getting a Best Actress nomination for A Quiet Place is the fact that there's a lot of buzz right now that she may get a Best Actress nomination for Mary Poppins, and you can't be nominated twice in the same year in the same category. So that could be the bigger problem for her. So we'll have to kind of see how that all works out. Eric Gordon writes, what exactly is a pack of cockroaches? Okay, so I'm not sure. Like, first of all, the pack of cockroaches usually is a term I use when I talk about AMC Theaters' HR department. And again, that's just my opinion. Just expressing my opinion that AMC Theaters' HR department is staffed entirely by a pack of cockroaches. Anyway. That's just my thought on that. I've never hid that. I've never been shy about that. But again, it is just my opinion. But it does bring up the question, what is the plural of for a group of cockroaches? It is not a gaggle of cockroaches. It is not a, what do you call when there's a bunch of dolphins? They call that a something of dolphins. I'm not sure. Wolves run, it's a pack of wolves. It's a family of this. I'm not quite sure what the proper terminology would be for cockroaches, so I just go for a pack of cockroaches, but I'm probably wrong about that. All right, ZOMG Ruler writes, guess DC just isn't as popular in China as Marvel. I don't know about ZOMG. I'm assuming you're referring to the big success that Venom had in China. Remember, Venom is an MCU. I'd also want to caution, see, what we as people do when something happens, we look for relevant causation or causality, as Vision would say. We look for connective causality in places we probably shouldn't look. Look, Venom worked in China because just as a movie, it looked more appealing to people in China. Venom worked in China maybe because the audience reaction was so positive. And then it opened there. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons, but I think we shouldn't start grasping and saying, oh, well, the reason is then people in China prefer Marvel over DC. I don't know that we should make that leap. That's a big leap. I think 95% of it is just that Venom looked like a really appealing movie to the audiences in China. And clearly it looked like a really appealing movie to audiences in North America too, because it made a hell of a lot of money here too. So I wouldn't start making big stretching jumps to start finding all these other reasons that probably have nothing to do with it. Maybe it's a finite little thing, but I really don't think anything more beyond that. Jesse the Savage writes, I heard Aquaman is opening weekend with 50 million. Well, yes and no. That's the neighborhood. They're talking about right now. The advanced tracking for Aquaman at one point was at 50. They've adjusted that up now to 55. I believe it's going to end up higher than that. I believe Aquaman's probably going to come in the $65 to $75 million range, which would be great, which would be wonderful. But the funny thing is here, this just goes to prove what I've been saying all along. All of these movies opening up in that death window in December, where you got Aquaman, you got Mary Poppins, you got Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse, you got Mortal Engines, you got Bumblebee, you got all these movies, these big, high-profile, potentially blockbuster kind of movies opening up all within the same week of each other. And my argument that I've been making this whole time is simply this. All of these movies could end up making money, but they all would have made more money if they didn't open all together in the same week. Aquaman could open to $70 million. Great. That's wonderful. But make no mistake about it. If they had moved the release date, it could have made $85 or $95 million opening weekend. And guess what? Bumblebee's tracking at like 20. Now, granted, there's a big uphill battle that Bumblebee has to fight because of how crappy the Transformers movies have been. But this movie looks good trailers, popular IP, definitely would have opened to more than 20 million, or would be tracking for more than 20 million if it wasn't opening on that day. Mary Poppins right now is tracking at 40. I got to believe it would have tracked bigger if it wasn't opening on the same, if its first weekend wasn't going to be the same weekend as Bumblebee and Aquaman. So again, it just goes to prove everything I've been saying. I believe they can still make money, maybe even some good money. But make no mistake about it, they would have made more money had they opened on other dates. So, yeah, the tracking for Aquaman has gone up. It's now sitting at about 55, but again, I believe it'll be north of that. I'm thinking the $65 to $75 million range is more likely, which would be a fantastic result for a standalone Aquaman movie if it does get that high. And I'm just saying, though, it would have been more if it opened another day. That's all I'm saying. All right. Tom Growcut writes, is Thor too powerful? Seems like he'll beat anyone. Well, I don't think so. I still think Hulk wins that fight. I mean, we've seen Hulk beat up Thor before. And then in that fight on Sakaar, that fight didn't get a chance to end. And I still believe, had the fight continued to drag on, Hulk ultimately wins that fight. I believe. Now, Thor, though, he is the god of thunder. He's an Asgardian. Of course, like, somebody's got to be the most powerful, right? Maybe they're trying to angle Thor that. Maybe they're angling Captain Marvel that, whatever. But you can make the argument that they've taken Thor and then taken him even to the next level up by replacing Mjolnir with Stormbreaker. You know, he just about took out Thanos. He came this close to taking out Thanos. But, you know, other characters did pretty well against Thanos. You had, like, Captain America one-on-one got in a shot or two. Not Vision. Doctor Strange went one-on-one and did very well against Thanos one-on-one. Tony did really well against Thanos. I mean, relatively speaking, did pretty well one-on-one. Yes, he ended up with a big blade in his belly. And was spared by Thanos because Doctor Strange made a deal with him. But yeah, Thor came within this close to knocking him out. Look, it's clearly understood right from the first Avengers. The two guys you do not want to fight are Hulk and Thor. I mean, that's right from the first Avengers movie. That much is pretty clear. Hulk and Thor. Those are the two guys you don't want to go toe-to-toe with. Those are the two dudes you don't want to fight. So, I don't know. To me, remember, he almost took out Thor, but he didn't. I mean, he almost took out Thanos, but he didn't. He failed. So, I don't know. I think they have still shown Thor to be vulnerable enough and have weaknesses that I don't believe they've made him too powerful. And let's wait and see for Avengers 4 to see just how well it turns out. Look, Captain America ran into a slew of those space dogs and took them all out. You know, we saw War Machine do real well against the oncoming horde. You know, he did really well too. So did Thor. Thor was taking them out by the bushload. But have they made him too powerful? I don't know. I never got that sense. As long as I always feel like the character has true vulnerabilities, I never really feel like they're too powerful. And I think they've done that with Thor while increasing his power. And by the way, I don't think they're done with Hulk yet. I still believe, you guys know, I do not believe they have shown us the true power of Hulk yet. There's a reason why everybody fears Hulk. And I don't think they've tapped into that yet. And I think that's still going to be coming. But we'll have to wait and see. Praise Kirigara writes, if all the current DC movies are good and they do want to start a new DC universe, can't they put those movies in their I believe I'm going to assume you mean THEIR, their DC Black Label. Okay, first of all, for those of you who don't know what Black Label is a new thing that DC Comics has been doing and that they just recently introduced, where it's comics that are outside of their DC universe in the comics. So you have your DC universe of the comics, your continuity, right? You have your canon, your continuity, the real ongoing stories. But what DC just did is they said, you know what? There's some really cool stories we could tell, but they don't fit in with our DC universe in the comics. Let's create a new label and call it the Black Label. And that way, writers and artists and creators can tell whatever stories they want with Batman, with Superman, with any of our DC characters. And we just tell our audience, if it's Black Label, that means it's outside of our ongoing comic book continuity. right? So you can explore and tell fun new stories. Exactly what I want the movie studios to do. That's why I'm so excited about this Joker movie and all this kind of stuff. Now, but Black Label is a comic book thing. It is not a movie thing. So, and we shouldn't get them confused. But we'll see. I think DC has some plans for what they're going to do moving forward with these Elseworld movies. And I think a lot of that will be contingent upon how well this Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix does. Remember, this Joker movie is not connected to the DCEU. It's not connected in any way, shape, or form. It's not in the same universe as Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, Wonder Woman, any of the Suicide Squad. It's not in the same universe as any of those. It's its own standalone universe, one-shot movie. That's not connected in any way. So that means they can do things in there that contradict what's going on in the DCEU. That's what they're doing in the comics with Black Label, but just because it's in the comics, that doesn't mean what they're doing here. We'll see what DC's plans are, but I like the trend. I do. I think anything you can do to give us the possibilities for some really new, really interesting stories is great. So I'm looking forward to it. All right. Ryan Gosper writes, "Hey, John, do you think there's a chance we will finally hear Captain America say the famous line, Avengers Assemble in Avengers 4? I'd put money on it. I really would. I would put money on it. That's how good I feel about it. Now, the challenge, of course, is that in the comic books, it's great. Saying Avengers Assemble, that can on the surface sound kind of cheesy, right? But it's just a matter of finding a way in the right context and having Captain America say it the right way that'll work. And I'm sure they can find that way. And I think they've held off on it more. Remember, they almost said it. I believe it was at the end of Age of Ultron. It was the end of Age of Ultron. You almost heard Captain America say it. They ended the film with Captain America and Black Widow standing there with this new crew of Avengers. And he says, Avengers. And then the screen goes black. And you knew he was about to say Avengers Assemble, but they didn't show it. I believe they've been holding off on it. I believe we're going to see it in Avengers 4. I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating, but I feel pretty confident that we will see it in Avengers 4. I'm going to feel really let down if we don't. Let's put it that way. You held off. Great. Now's the time to cash in on it. I'm going to feel like it's a missed opportunity if they don't give that to us. And I think they will. All right. Blake Carson writes, I hate Transformers and love superheroes, but I'm more excited for Bumblebee than Aquaman. Both series have burnt fans, but these look like fresh starts. And by the way, I'm with you on both. I think this Aquaman movie looks great. And you got James Wan in there directing. I think the trailers have been wonderful. I've always liked Jason Momoa's casting as Aquaman. The movie might suck, just like anything. But right now, it looks really good. And I got to say, as somebody who's been burned by Transformers so many times, the big thing is there's a new director. That changes everything. Changing directors changes everything. And it's not just any director. It's Travis Knight, the guy who directed Kubo and the Two Strings. And that movie is all about direction. And it was wonderfully directed, wonderfully done. And if he can bring that sensibility to Bumblebee, that could mean some very, very good things for this movie. So you're right. It's a good observation, Blake. These are franchises that have burnt audiences. But these new and they'll both suffer. Make no mistake about it. They will both suffer as a result of previous installments burning the audience a bit. You know, Aquaman is going to suffer a little bit from the fact that so many people didn't like Justice League. I liked it, but a lot of people didn't. And Aquaman will suffer a little bit for that. Maybe it makes 70 million opening, but if everybody loved Justice League, you could be looking at 100+ million opening for Aquaman, right? Same is true as Bumblebee. Bumblebee is going to pay the price for the previous Transformers installments burning the audience so much. It's not fair, but it is what it is. Can they change the narrative? Winning cures everything. We're just going to have to wait and see. Good observation, Blake. All right. Arun Bajuraj writes, follow up to Disney Plus. Do you think Runaways and Cloak and Dagger will be moved to Disney Plus streaming? I really want them to restart Agent Carter as well. Well, it really all depends on the contracts. I mean, the fact of the matter is, Hulu, I think, has the production rights on it. I could be wrong, but it depends on the contract. You can't just say, oh, we're just going to take that property back now. Well, it depends on the contract. Hulu may have a contract with Runaways. By the way, Runaways is great. I love the Runaways. It's very different from the graphic novels, but it carries over just the right amount of similarities and then does all these things differently to make it work for television. And I think it's a wonderful show. Cloak and Dagger, not as much. I'm not a fan of Cloak and Dagger. The first season had some promise, did not work out well. But again, look, it really all depends on the contract. If Hulu has a contract that says we get to make these shows as long as we want, then there's nothing Marvel can do about it. But it all depends on the nature and the details in the contracts, and that we just don't know at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. I would be perfectly happy for them to dump Cloak and Dagger. They squandered their promise. Runaways, though, I don't care if it's on Hulu. I don't care if it's on Disney Plus. I just want to see more Runaways because I think the Runaways is a great show. All right, let's move on here. Sen Paragar writes, thoughts on the Kylo Ren theme? I love it. Oh, John Williams, seriously, I think he scored great with that. It's John Williams, man. There's something. John Williams' movie themes know how to elicit emotion out of the people listening to them, right? He's done that for decades. Doesn't matter if it's Indiana Jones or if it's Superman or if it's Jaws or if it's E.T. or if it's Harry Potter or if it's Star Wars or whatever, you name it. He knows how to elicit emotion out of his audience. And I think he's done that. Like, love or hate the new breed of Star Wars films. Love or hate them. John Williams is still John Williams. And yeah, I really dig the Kylo Ren theme. Is it as iconic as like the Imperial March or things like that? No, but I think it's a wonderful theme, so I'm with you on that. Sen Paragar follows up. Any news on the Mulan live action movie? Would love to see the scene on the mountaintop live action. Oh, it's in production. Actually, they got to be getting close to wrapping production. They started production. They started shooting the movie in August. So they got to be damn close to wrapping up, if they're not wrapped already. And they very well could be wrapped already. Maybe I just missed the news. But if they're not wrapped already, they got to be getting damn close to wrapping. So it's being shot. We are in that window of time with this movie's development that I say no news is good news. You don't want to hear any news at this. There shouldn't be any news. All the casting is done. The script is complete. Your director's there, blah, blah, blah. Now you're shooting. We are in that window of time when there should be no news. Because if any news comes out about Mulan at this point, it's only bad news. If any news comes out at this point when you're at this stage, it's generally just going to be bad. So we're in that window of time with Mulan where there should be no news. No news is good news. The only bit of news we should hear next is shooting is now wrapped. That should be it. So, no new news, no, but that's good. We're in a period of time when there shouldn't be any new news. Fingers crossed. Dylan Flickinger writes, Overlord was an amazing theatrical experience. This deserves some Oscar nominee recognition for zombie makeup and visual effects. First of all, I had a lot of fun with Overlord. I had a lot of fun. Or, Wolfenstein 3D, the movie. I had a lot of fun with Overlord. And I thought it was intense, far more intense. Like, the movie starts with planes being shot out of the sky. Amazing. Like, it just grabbed you, made you clench your butt cheeks right from the beginning of the movie right to the end. I had a great time with Overlord. Oscar nominations for makeup and visual effects. I don't know. There's a lot of big makeup and visual effects movies this year. And we're not talking about Best Picture category where you can have up to 10 nominees. It's like 3 to 5 in some of these categories. It's going to be tough. It could happen. Yeah, you could. You could get Best Makeup Effect nomination. You could get Best Visual Effects nomination. It's in the running. I wouldn't put my money on it though, because there's a lot of big makeup and a lot of big visual effects movies this year. So that's gonna be tough. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I agree with you, Dylan. I thought Overlord was a great theatrical experience. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm glad you did too. All right. Marie Seifring writes, saw Girl in the Spider's Web last night. I found it okay. I think okay is the best way to put it, but not great. The plot was predictable, but Claire Foy did a nice job. Thanks. You know, and this is a great example that a lot of people, and clearly you don't do this, Marie, which is a good thing. A lot of people confuse a good movie with good performances, or a bad movie with bad performances. It's like, this actor? Well, he was in this movie that sucks, so that means he's a bad actor. No. You can have a bad movie that somebody gives a great performance in. And you can have a good movie that somebody gives a come see, come saw performance in. Right? Absolutely. Claire Foy is a powerhouse actress. Just a powerhouse actress. And I thought she did something I didn't think could be done, which she made me put my Rooney Mara version of Elizabeth on the side, because I loved Rooney Mara as the girl with the dragon tattoo. I loved her in that. I was bummed out when it became official that she was not coming back. But Claire Foy is such a great actress that she made me buy into the character. Didn't save the rest of the movie. Again, it's not bad. But she was great in it. And she was amazing in First Man. I cannot wait to see her more. She's just dynamite. She's absolutely dynamite. Let's see. CJ Adams writes, Detective Pikachu trailer looks awesome. Look, it is one of those movies where a movie of Detective Pikachu. And even when they announced Ryan Reynolds, I should say, the other Canadian Ryan. And yes, they are both Canadian. Even when they announced Ryan Reynolds, who I adore, I was still, come on, really? A Detective Pikachu movie? Then the trailer came out. And then I'm like, okay, you turn me around. This looks interesting. This looks like it could be fun. And I'm on board to see it. So yeah, the trailer absolutely did its job, CJ. The trailer absolutely did its job. Sin Paragar writes, best video game movie, in my opinion, was Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Was a great game, and I really enjoyed the movie. Awesome visuals and action. Well, you know, that's the great thing, man. Movies are subjective. And your opinion is no more and no less valid than mine. I thought it was really a bad movie. Great action and visuals? Sure. But those are only two elements of the dozens of elements that go into making a movie. And I thought they kind of flopped on everything else. But hey, that's the great thing about being a movie fan. There's something I could love that you hate, or something that you love that I can hate, and it's all good, right? Yeah, I was not a fan of what they did with Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. I checked it out online because somebody told me I should check it out. I thought it was just a mess. I didn't like it at all. But yes, definitely great action and great visuals, though. Chris Torres writes, love the show, listening to you while at work. Well, thank you so much, Chris, and thank you for taking time to share that. Just don't get caught watching the show, or don't get caught listening to the show, whatever it is. But I'm glad you're along for the ride, and thanks for being a film fan, and thanks for saying that, dude. That's always nice. All right. Bobby Graham writes, a lot of people would say Warner Brothers / DC rushed leading up to Justice League, and I disagree with that wholeheartedly. But now are they taking too much time with their quote-unquote new direction? First of all, I thoroughly reject this notion that Warner Brothers rushed Justice League. I completely reject that. Completely reject it. It doesn't matter if you did 12 standalone individual movies first and then put out that exact same Batman or that exact same Justice League movie, it still would have got the same results and the same response from everybody. It's like what I was talking about earlier. It's not about what formula do you take, it's about do you execute whichever formula it is that you use. I thoroughly reject the notion that they rushed Justice League. It could have been great. I think you could have started your DCEU with Justice League. I think you could have done the exact opposite of what Marvel did. I believe you could have started the DCEU with a Justice League movie being carried by Batman and Superman, your most popular characters, and get everybody really into Wonder Woman and Cyborg and Flash and Aquaman and hell, maybe even other characters. You could have brought in a Hawkman if you wanted to, or reintroduced a Green Lantern, or gone Martian Manhunter, even though I'm not a Martian Manhunter fan, whatever. If you had led off with the Justice League movie and made a great movie, nobody would have been talking about they rushed Justice. Nobody would have been talking about that. If the movie was great and won everybody over, there would have been no murmuring and complaining, oh, but they should have done this and they did that and they rushed this and that. No. Would have been none of that nonsense. None of that nonsense. Winning cures everything. They could have come out of the gate with the Justice League movie right off the bat and it could have been huge. That doesn't mean they had to do it that way. You could totally do it, starting with Man of Steel and then doing Batman versus Superman, and then doing Suicide Squad. That could have worked too, if you crushed every one of those movies. And they didn't. I mean, I think they crushed one or two of them, particularly Man of Steel, but they didn't with the wide audience. And that's the thing. So first of all, I completely reject this whole thing that they rushed Justice League. No, they didn't. It's just the path they chose to take, and had they executed, none of this would be a problem. Are they taking too much time with their new direction? See, I was wondering that myself. Like, as we were getting to Justice League and you looked at the release schedule and you realized they got no new DC movies coming out for a year? Like, we got 3 MCU movies coming out between Justice League and Aquaman. They got 3 MCU movies in that window, none from DC. But you know what? That's starting to look like a genius move. Because now we're getting close to Aquaman. Aquaman looks great. And that bad taste in some people's mouths of Justice League is now a year old. Maybe people started to push some of that out of their mind. I questioned it before too, but now I'm starting to wonder if it wasn't a brilliant move. The important thing is this. Do everything at the pace that works for your plan. And if what works for your plan was taking a year off between Justice League and Aquaman, and now having Aquaman, Shazam, Wonder Woman 84 come out, blah, blah, blah. If that's the timing that is needed for your plan, a plan that we don't know yet. We on the outside, we don't know what Hamada's plan is. We don't know what this new sheriff in town, Walter Hamada, what his plan is. But if this is the timing that is needed for his plan to work, then that's the timing you do. So, yeah, there was a point where I thought this was really taking too much time, but I'm starting to think maybe it was a good idea. But the proof is in the pudding. We'll have to wait and see. If Aquaman comes out and crushes it, isn't nobody going to be talking about they took too long? There's going to be nobody talking about this, that. It's all just going to be talking about how great Aquaman is. Winning cures everything. If they can pull that off, that's what we're looking for. And everything looks good so far. All right. Our final email today comes to us from Brian Paz, who writes, World-adjusted money, Gone with the Wind, #1. Thoughts? Well, Brian, this is something a lot of people bring up a lot. And I will tell you exactly what I always say when people bring this up. The notion that we should count box office, all-time box office, by adjusted for inflation numbers is completely, radically erroneous. That's a bad idea. Because you can say, oh, well, there's this variable. Yeah, Titanic or Avatar is the #1 movie of all time. But see, there's this variable that the value of $1 when the movie tickets were sold back then is different from the value of $1 now. And if you extrapolate and adjust for those inflation values and blah, 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 then this movie looked, blah. That's a bad way of doing things. Why is it a bad way of doing things? Because if you're going to start taking contextual variables into consideration, like inflation is a contextual variation. It's a contextual variable. If you're going to start taking contextual variables in consideration, like inflation, then you got to take other contextual variables into consideration as well. You don't just get to pick and choose one contextual variable and ignore all the other contextual variables. Like, how about this? How about when Gone with the Wind came out, like, one movie a month came out. I mean, that's exaggeration, but it wasn't like today, where you had 15 big major Hollywood wide release films coming out every single month. It wasn't like today. That's a contextual variable. Are you going to take that in consideration? Well, when Gone with the Wind came out, only X number of big Hollywood wide release films came out per month. So now we've got to divide how many come out today versus how many came out then, and you got to take that in consideration too. Well, if you want to take the inflation and the dollar value at the time into consideration, then you got to take that into consideration too. Oh, and by the way, if you're going to take that contextual variable into consideration, then you also got to take the other contextual variables into consideration. Like, guess what? When Gone with the Wind came out, people didn't have the option to stay at home and watch 5,000 different channels, including Netflix and Hulu and HBO and Showtime, and they didn't have their streaming boxes, and they didn't have personal DVRs, and they didn't have, VOD, and they didn't have blah, 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 blah. That was a huge entertainment option that exists today to compete against movies and theaters that didn't exist back when Gone with the Wind came out. Gone with the Wind had a massive advantage over modern films because of that contextual variable. So when somebody says to me, we should take the contextual variable of inflation into consideration when evaluating our overall box office. Oh, so you want to pick and choose which ones get used? You can't do that. If you want to take contextual variables into consideration, then you got to take them all into consideration. You don't get to pick and choose one and say, that gives us our answer. Do not underestimate for 1 second what video game consoles, that competition for people's expendable entertainment dollar, is a huge variable today that movies have to contend with that Gone with the Wind never had to deal with. Gone with the Wind didn't have to deal with, hey, the people can come out and see our movie, or they could spend their expendable entertainment dollars on buying a $400 PlayStation 4 Pro thing. That will prevent a lot of people from coming out to the movies because they're spending their expendable money. They're spending their expendable money on that $400 1 terabyte PlayStation 4 Pro Spider-Man bundle, which is actually closer to like $500. But anyway, that is something movies back then never had to contend with. That is a massive advantage. Massive advantage. And we could go on and on and on and on about all the various, contextual variables that go into play. The best way then to do it, and there's no perfect way, the best way to do it then is just to take all the contextual variables out of the equation and take it all at face value. Is that perfect? No. But it's a lot better than just picking or choosing one or two cultural variables that we want to, figure into our evaluation of everything while ignoring all the other contextual variables. Then that's a lie. That creates a lie. So, Gone with the Wind, #1 worldwide, if you take into consideration the dollar value of inflation and all that kind of stuff, yes. But if you want to start then dividing those results by number of films that come out, number of theaters available right now, the amount of other entertainment options to people, the explosion of video game console popularity, the emergence of Netflix and Amazon Prime and things like that. Well, if you want to start dividing Gone with the Wind's total and start knocking it down in the light of all these other contextual variables, sure, but we don't do that. So you don't pick and choose which one to apply and then ignore all the other ones. You either apply them all or ignore them all. And I think the best thing to do is just ignore them all and go with clean face value. Is it a perfect way to do it? No, but it's the best way to do it. Anyway, that's just my opinion on that. That will do it, guys, for this installment of the companion videos. Now, listen, some of you might be saying, hey, wait, there were other questions that didn't get. Yeah, there are still more I've got backpiled, and we're going to get to those with another installment of the companion video coming up later, either today or tomorrow. In the next couple of days, you're going to see another companion video. So don't worry. If you didn't see your question pop up, it's probably just being saved for another companion video, which is coming up here pretty soon. Anyway, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name is John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.